start us out and tell us about your trajectory of ending up reporting on corruption and fraud and then getting into financial fraud. Take us through a little bit of your history.
Okay, I started out in college in the early 60s. I got involved in the civil rights movement. I took a leave of absence from college and went to Mississippi and became editor of the Mississippi Free Press, which I was for a year. So that's when I decided to be a journalist, because I thought the important thing is to help change the situation of things that are hurting people. One way to change it is to write about it. So I began to write about civil rights issues, and then I got involved in the women's movement and wrote about women's issues. I was a national vice president of NOW in 1970 to 71.
Uh-huh.
And from there, I got involved in writing about what was going on in other countries, in developing countries, where the corrupt people were destroying the lives of the people there. And I went to places like the Philippines. I was there when Marcos was overthrown. I went to Zaire. Mobutu was in charge. I went to Haiti. But one thing was so interesting. In all of those places, the oppositions, and we're talking about 3 different continents, said the dictator has looted the country and put the money in Swiss banks. And I thought, oh my God, what? Swiss banks? And I had never been reading about that in the newspapers. Of course, the newspapers never wrote about things like that. So I started looking into it and discovered the offshore system, the secret bank account, the secret company system, which is, and a lot of it, of course, is run by the big international banks. They run offshore banks because they make a lot of money. So after going to those places, I got involved in looking at the offshore system, the corrupt offshore system. And that took me into the issue of financial and corporate corruption, because whenever there is financial and corporate corruption, they are using the offshore system. There's some way hiding their money, or they're laundering their money. One thing just led to another, and that's what led me finally to deal with the story I'm dealing with now, the William Browder Magnitsky fraud. But it also involved some other things. I discovered that Alan Stanford, who was the big Ponzi schemer after Madoff, $7 billion, and he had operated through moving money to Antigua, another offshore place.
And that's the one you won the Loeb Prize for your coverage.
I won the Gerald Loeb Award for that.
Yeah.
And it was page 1 on the Miami Herald, but none of the other media were interested in this story. They ran stories about how the poor soccer team in Antigua was no longer getting support from Alan Stanford. This was much more important than explaining the story I did, which was about how the Florida banking department had enabled Stanford to move money offshore with no regulation. I did a story about Cheney. When he ran Halliburton, they were involved together with a French company of taking bribes for Venezuela contracts. And I've documented that. Nobody went after Cheney. Too important. Again, it ran through an offshore company. The bribes were paid through an offshore company. I discovered that offshore is the place that the crooks love, because that's how they move their money. But it exists because the banks don't want to stop it. They make a lot of money from it. And the Browder story that I've been doing now also worked through offshore. He set up his operation through Mossack Fonseca, Panama Papers, offshore companies. It was all offshore. So it's the system run by the big banks has developed a structure, a superstructure that allows the crooks to steal from us all.
Right. And I just want to mention one of the reasons I got interested in the offshore system was, as all the money was disappearing from the US government, the offshore system was exploding. And you literally, as the money was disappearing from one, the size of the assets under management in the other was rising. And it was almost as though, it almost looked in some years like a direct transfer.